last night. The two sparred over guns, anthem protests, health care, and, of course, immigration.
We need to do everything humanly possible to secure the border. That means building a wall. Congressman O'Rourke, over and over and over again, his focus seems to be on fighting for illegal immigrants.
There should be an earned path to citizenship. The alternative, as Senator Cruz has proposed, is to deport 11 million people from this country. Imagine the cost. Imagine the stain on our conscience going forward.
Meanwhile, the Cook Political Report has updated its ranking for that race from leans Republican now to toss-up. Let's bring back in Zerlina Maxwell, Joe Watkins, and Rick Tyler. So, Rick, I said I was going to ask you about this. You certainly are the former spokesman for Senator Cruz's presidential campaign. So do you think Beto O'Rourke has a real shot at winning this?
Well, let me put on my political analyst, which is what you all have me on for. Yes, he has a shot of winning this race. This race has been trending toward Beto since its inception. I've said for weeks now that this race could be won by Beto. That doesn't mean it's likely that he could win, but it's in the realm of possibility. For a long time, Texas was out of reach of the Democrats because it's been a red state. It's really the future of the Texas that's the real problem for Republicans, because Republicans continue to alienate African Americans and Hispanics, and 1 out of every 3 Hispanics in Texas is actually too young to vote. 1 out of every 4 African Americans in Texas is actually too young to vote. You don't have to be a mathematician to figure out what the future is. Okay.
Is it all, though, this race about immigration, Rick?
I don't think it's all about immigration, but there's certainly a debate, and I think both are carrying their points about it. Ted Cruz believes that we need to build a wall and secure the border, and Beto O'Rourke has another point of view. Normally, in Texas, Beto wouldn't, the Democrat wouldn't be expected to full-throatedly embrace his point of view, which the right would call an amnesty position, right? But that has earned him a lot of credit as opposed to people shunning him, and that's why it's become a close race, because the immigration debate, and we haven't had any leadership on immigration. There's no politicians that have been coming up with really sensible, rational immigration reform. We need reform on immigration. We are a country of immigrants. We should welcome immigrants legally, and we should make sure that there's a process to do that. Right now, that's not possible, and the debate is about how we do it.
So, Joe, looking at the polls, very different numbers coming out this week of the field there. One of the polls shows Cruz leading by 9 points. The other has him 2 points behind. You know what it brings back is the memory of the flawed polling in 2016. How are you making sense of these numbers?
Well, what it means to me is that this race really is a toss-up. It could go either way. It's much closer than any poll is telling you that it is. And what really matters is turnout, of course, on election day, and how energized voters are on one side of the aisle or the other to show up to vote. And certainly for African-American voters, I mean, you got to be listening to what the candidates have to say about these police shootings. You have a black man in Dallas who was murdered in his own apartment by a Dallas police officer. The response to that is critical if you are a candidate running for the Senate in the year 2018 in Texas. How you respond to that question is critical. So, yeah, black voters, I think, will be energized to come out, as well as Hispanic and others.
You know, Zerlina, Democrats have only recently started to believe that Texas could be within reach. Rick makes the point that look at the Republican Party down the road, given the age of so many future voters. But what do you think right now is driving the shift for this election?
Well, I think to Joe's point, I think the recent shooting of an unarmed black man in his own home by a police officer is an issue that is going to encourage black voters in Texas who may not have even cared before about a midterm election, because Texas is such a red state historically, will care and will go out to support Beto, who has been very authentic in talking about the issue, versus Ted Cruz, who literally said the victim found himself murdered, which is, you know, a really clumsy way to talk about such a horrific tragedy that we still are learning more about every day. Additionally, I think Democrats have done a lot of work on the ground organizing and registering new voters. And so essentially what you have in this particular race is a change in the electorate, or at least that's what Democrats are trying to do, change the electorate, make it more people of color and younger millennial voters, so that the outcome is different. That's what Barack Obama did so successfully in 2008. And so I think Beto is one of those politicians who actually says the unpopular thing because it's actually what he believes, and that is what's resonating with voters in Texas, and so we'll see how it turns out. But I think he's teaching Democrats a lesson. Don't run to the center. Don't try to be Republican light. Be authentically you, and that is going to resonate with voters, hopefully, in the election in November.
All right, Zerlina Maxwell, Joe Watkins, Rick Tyler. Team Saturday. Good to see you guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, Alex.
Waiting and
Thanks,
watching
Alex.
the deadline for Christine Blasey Ford to make up her mind about testifying publicly. That's about 90 minutes away.